Okay, class. So the last video was about Rome's geography and how that impacted the settling of Rome being built beside these mountains and being separated from other regions. And in this video, we're going to look at early Roman politics. So we mentioned Rome as a whole was founded around 800 BCE, but the politics really started to change around 509 BC. And there's different debates on when Rome truly started because there's no exact records written down of when the city was founded. And we talked about like the founding myth with Romulus and Remus in the last video, and these twins that were the sons of Mars, the war god, creating the city and having a divine origin. But most people agree that the Romans settled there like from the Latin people, and before the Romans there were the Etruscans who lived there, and the Romans ended up driving out these Etruscan rulers and establishing a republic. And the idea of a republic is really important to us in the United States because our government is a republic. So you might hear democratic republic or different things, but we have a republic. So a republic is going to sound similar to you because we just got done talking about Greece and their democracy. Well, in a republic, again, they didn't. A republic, the reason why the Romans formed this is because they did not want one person to have all the power. So the Etruscans had kings, and the Romans thought this was a bad idea. So instead, they created a republic, which is a state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives, and which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. So, if you think back to Greece, they had a democracy, and for them, it was a direct democracy. So, every citizen in ancient Greece, which was land owning men, had a right in the laws that were made. Well, here they Romans realized there was too many people, so instead they elected officials to represent them. So in the United States, we elect senators and representatives for the House and have a bicameral or two house legislative branch, and then we have the president as the executive branch. So it, our government is based off the Romans, which is why we need to know about the Roman government. So for the Romans, their government structure is there was the patricians who were the land holding upper class. So these were the rich people. And then there was the plebeians who were the farmers, merchants, artisans, and traders. So there was different levels of plebeians, but we don't need to go into that. Merchants and traders were wealthier than farmers, but they were still plebeians and didn't have as many rights as the patricians. And this pyramid kind of shows you that there's less patricians than there were plebeians. So that's why the plebeians are on the bottom. And then as you go up, there's less of them. And we've talked about social structure before and seen this pyramid before with India and the class system, how the Brahmin were at the top and then the Kshatriya were in the middle, and then at the very bottom was like the Sudra and the untouchables. And so we've had pyramid class systems in other societies. So the governing body for the republic was the Senate. So that's why one of our branches of the legislative branch is the Senate. We get that from the Romans. And then there was consuls who were two patricians, and these consuls were the ones who led the Senate and decided what was going to be talked about and things of that nature. So the consuls were powerful leaders of the Senate. So now we have the Senate majority leader who's Mitch McConnell, and then we have the Senate minority leader. And so they lead the two parties in the Senate. So that's similar to the consuls. So then instead of a president, they had a dictator, and their dictator wasn't like current like dictators. Like the dictator was powerful still, but they didn't have nobody checking their power. The dictator was just assigned to be in charge in the event of a war, and the dictator only had power for 6 months. And some of these, so the dictator was kind of like the president, and if war broke out, then the dictator could make rules and do what was needed. But other than that, the dictator was just a regular person as well. So you end up getting issues between the patricians and the plebeians, which other societies have. So you could look at this as issues between the rich versus the poor, which we have arguments in our country about this all the time. You have people complaining that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Well, and the class divide, the Romans also had this issue. So the plebeians or the poor people had no say in the government. And eventually they got some power and they were able to elect their own officials called tribunes, but this didn't happen till 494. And then for 84 years, from 421 to 337, the plebeians fought to have a role in each part of the government. So the poor people or the plebeians felt that the patricians had too much power, and they fought and compromised and worked to get power. So we see this in our society. When our country was formed, it was only white men that could vote. And then eventually it became all men could vote. And then eventually after that, women earned the right to vote, but it came in stages on. So our country, everybody didn't have a right to vote at the beginning either. And Rome was the same way. So the social structure in Rome, the man was the head of the household, and his wife and children did not question his authority. So most of the power lied with the man. And over time, and which was centuries, so a century is 100 years. So this is plural. So over a few hundred years, women finally received more rights, and these included being able to own property and run businesses. So just like in the United States, women have the rights now to vote and to own land and own businesses. They gained this right in Rome too, but it took fighting, and we as the in the United States didn't learn from this. We repeated the same pattern that the Romans made. One thing that we copied and is similar is all children were taught to learn to read and write. So in other societies in ancient times, like the Greeks, the girls may not have learned to read and write. Like they did the household chores, and it was the boys that learned how to do math and science and read and write. But for the Romans, all children were taught to read and write. So this is key, that they understood the importance of teaching all children. And here in the United States, we also understand that all children deserve the right to be taught. And you may not appreciate the right to be taught, and you may see school as not fun and things, but it's actually a blessing, and you should be grateful that you get the privilege to have education, because even in other countries today, kids don't always get education. In Asian countries, girls get less education than boys. And in some African countries and things, kids don't even go to school like past a certain age because they have to work to provide for their family. So school is a privilege, and it's important to appreciate the fact that you're getting an education. And we get the idea of all children getting an education from the Romans. And wealthy children were still at an advantage. So the wealthy kids had private tutors for their children, but still the poor kids got an education just like the wealthy kids. And then Rome ends up growing stronger under this republic system. And like I mentioned in the geography video, Rome becomes the first true empire. So, an empire is a region, like a bunch of land that's controlled by one government. So, we talked about the Persian Empire, but they allowed other people to keep their laws and have different their own kings, but the Roman Empire ends up capturing the land. And at first, the Roman Empire conquered people justly, which just means that they were kind to their conquered people, but eventually the conquered people become slaves. So at first, they allowed the conquered people to keep their culture, customs, and government as long as they supplied soldiers, paid taxes, and acknowledged Roman leadership. So this was very similar to the Persians' method and the Zoroastrianism that they practiced. The Persians let people keep their laws and rulers, and the Roman Empire starts out this way, but they don't stay this way. And the military for Rome was made up of citizens. So, and then by 270 BC, Rome had controlled most of the Italian peninsula. So, instead of being like Greece with the different city states controlling different parts of the Greek peninsula, Rome, the one city of Rome, captures the whole peninsula and has control over that. So, this video covers the early history of Roman politics and relates it to our politics about how we have elected officials that represent us. We have a Senate, and there's the majority leader and minority leader in our Senate. And the dictator of our Senate is the vice president. He plays that role. And then we also get the idea of education and all children being educated from the Roman. So that's the rest of this video. In the next video section, we're going to be covering the later Roman Empire and going more into what happens in the later Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire lasted from the founding of around 509 BC all the way up to the 1300s. Like, it turns into the Byzantine Empire, but the Roman Empire lasts for 1,000 to 1,500 years. Like, it's a long lasting empire. So we'll be covering more later.